I'm on the phone. Sorry, started trying about 5:45, and it kicked me out and said, I was bad people because I didn't know my password. Anyway, I'm on.
Okay, but you're on the phone, which is fine. You can still vote. And you can hear us, right, John?
We are live now. Just let you know.
I can hear you.
Okay, so I think we're all set. Yeah, Brian Borden? Yeah, Brian?
Brian?
I'm here. Yes, sir.
Okay, you're here?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we can start. Let's start the meeting. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So everybody we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Okay, thank you. So this is the board. Okay, this is zoning board meeting of Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yeah, Jim, this is Gary. I think we should congratulate Mr. Budney on his recent victory in the primary.
Thank you, Gary. We can do that after the meeting.
Yeah.
Some of us had already done that.
We'll do that.
I sent him an email, but I wanted to do it publicly. So
thank you, Gary. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, yeah. Good going, Jim. Okay, let's, do we have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Okay,
Support.
We have support?
Carnago.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, so the agenda is approved as written. Now we have the minutes of the July 28th, 2020 meeting. And do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Yeah, Jim, I have read them very carefully and want to commend the secretary. It was a well-done job, and I move we approve them.
Support?
Okay. Okay, we have support. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion carries. The minutes of July 28th, 2020 have been approved. The next item on the agenda is the appeal number 20-004. It's for Mr. Robert M. Gable of 28425 Swan Island Drive, has requested a public hearing before the Zoning Board of Appeals for a variance to extend spring or mooring piles into the canal that exceeds the 12-foot encroachment into the waterway on lot number 47 Swan Island subdivision as recorded in Wayne County Record Township of Grosse Ile County of Wayne, Michigan. Okay, what we do here, Mr. Gable, is we'll have our Brian Borden. He'll come up and give us an overview of the project, and and after he gives his overview through, then we'll have you come up and give us your reasons why we should approve the appeal. So we'll have Brian come up and give us the information regarding the appeal. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looks like John is messing around with the screen sharing, so I need him to get off that. John, if you can hear us.
I can, and my grandson's going to.
No, it's Schweikert. I'm sorry, John Carnago. I didn't clarify. John Schweikert is trying to share his screen, but I need access to share the screen.
Sitting out and not playing the game on Thursday.
Brian Friel, can you clean that up?
Yeah, sorry about that, Brian. Do you need multiple people to share at the same time? Because I don't have that.
Nope. I just needed mine to come up, so we got it.
You got it. Okay. Wondering.
Can you guys all see my presentation slide?
Yes.
It appears, yes.
All right. As long as everyone can see that, let's get rolling. Okay. Variance request for you tonight is for the property at 28425 Swan Island Drive. It is at the northeast corner of the bridge to Swan Island and Swan Island Drive. The site and surroundings are zoned R1B, single family residential. And the specific variance request before the board tonight is for a waterfront structure that extends approximately 16.5 feet into the canal where the ordinance limitation is 12 feet. Pertinent ordinance section is 17.4A of the township zoning ordinance. And you can see hopefully the subject site in aerial view on the screen in front of you. If we need to go back to this slide at any point, just say the word and I can go back if we want to look at the site in relation to any of its surroundings. So there is a little bit of background to this project. So I wanted to kind of go through as it started to where we are today, because I don't know if everybody was familiar with what has occurred to date. So I wanted to put this slide in for informational purposes for both the residents as well as the full board. So back in February, the Army Corps issued a permit for the 4 mooring piles. The permit does note a maximum of 17 feet into the waterway. Specifically in March, subsequent to that, the state issued their approval for the 4 pilings. And I think as most of you are aware, so that's now regulated by the EGLE, as they call it, Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, formerly DNR, formerly DEQ, etc. But it is the state agency that is responsible for waterfront structures. Following those approvals, the petitioner did submit their application for a waterfront structure to the township. So there's really three approvals that are needed for the waterfront structures. You need Army Corps, you need the state, and then you need the local approval, in this case being the township. Under the township zoning ordinance, section 17.5, anytime the township receives an application for a waterfront structure, there's a notification process that they have to go through, and it's related to, I think it's 500 foot along the waterway, if I'm not mistaken, but I can look that up if we need the specifics. Regardless, that notification was done subsequent to that submittal back in May. Following the distribution of those notices, the township did receive several letters from concerned residents. They did identify some objections and concerns about the project, and they also, as is their right under the zoning ordinance, they requested a public hearing before the Planning Commission. Now, we're not at that stage yet because subsequent to all of this, township staff reviewed the application and did find that there was the need for a variance. So that's the encroachment that the ZBA is dealing with tonight. And then late last month, we did receive the ZBA application from the petitioner. So where we are tonight is a Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing and then a decision on the variance request. If the board grants the variance request, then the next step will be to move this forward to the Planning Commission for a public hearing and their review and decision per the request of the residents under the township zoning ordinance. So I know that's a mouthful. I hope that all made sense to all the board members. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now, or I can continue forward and we can always go back to this slide if needed. All right, hearing none, I'm moving on. So here's a look at the site plan that was included with the ZBA submittal. And I apologize, I wanted to show the whole site. I know it's a little tricky to see, but you all do have this page in your hard copy packets as well. So the specific request is for 4 spring piles or mooring poles that would be 16 feet roughly into the canal. I mentioned at the outset, it's about 16.5 feet. The way I interpreted the request is that these are, it's essentially 16 foot to the center of the piles. So giving an extra couple of inches in terms of leeway for the max encroachment, because if the center point of it is at 16 foot, then obviously the pole itself encroaches just a little bit more than 16 feet. There are 4 such poles that are proposed. As you can see on the plan drawing, from south to north, the nearest pole is 45 foot from the bridge to the south. And then from the north to the south, there's 29 feet from the north side lot line to the nearest pole. And then there's a total of 4. They're spaced 10 feet apart. Another important item of note on the plan is the width of the canal. So in this case, we're looking at approximately 44 feet from the seawall to the center line of the canal as depicted. So with the 16-foot posts or poles, let me get out of that. We are, where'd you go? Sorry about that. I don't know why that highlighted. Simple math, so we're roughly 28 feet still from the center line of the canal itself. Mind you, there's still another approximately 44 feet from the center line to the other side of the canal in terms of the structure that the but the property owners across the canal. So again, I can come back to this slide if we want to look at this in more detail, but I wanted to highlight some of the key points in terms of the plan that's in front of you. So with respect to the specific ordinance standards, so we're dealing with, again, as I noted, 17.4 provides the regulations for waterfront structures. So specifically, 17.4 A1, A5 allows spring piles and mooring poles as permitted waterfront structures. However, section 17.4 A5 allows a maximum encroachment of 12 feet into the canal for a permitted waterfront structure. As such, the applicant seeks a single variance, which is to permit a waterfront structure with an encroachment of approximately 16.5 feet, where the ordinance max is 12 feet. On the right side of the screen, you'll see a summary of section 23.5B. These are the dimensional variance review standards. So these are the standards that the board must apply in its decision-making process. Items 1 through 14, which are all elaborated in greater detail in my review letter dated August 20 of this year. But again, these are the standards that the board will use to come to its conclusion on the request that's before them. And as per usual, any motion that you make either for or against the project, you should cite this section and these review criteria as the rationale for that decision. So getting into really the meat of the matter, I've put forth a summary of my review letter. This does follow the order of the review letter and of these review standards. So as you follow, bullet point 1 is in response to the practical difficulty test. Bullet point 2, substantial justice. Bullet point 3, public safety, etc. So keep those in mind as I proceed through my review summary here. So strict compliance in this case will not prevent continued use of the property as a single family residence. It is a developed site. It does have a principal permitted use established. However, in order to make a favorable finding under this criterion, the board would need to view strict compliance as unnecessarily burdensome to the applicant, in this case also the owner. Sorry. Item 2. I would like the applicant, when they get their turn, I would like them to discuss with the board any alternatives to the variance being sought that they looked into. I did put forth a note in my review letter of potentially a boat well, not uncommon in these parts, and I want them to explain to the board what they looked at as an alternative, how they came to the conclusion that the project before you was the best, the most reasonable request, the best available option, if you will. Item 3, so as it relates to the waterway clearance, the zoning ordinance requires a 30-foot minimum clearance, 15 foot on either side of the center line. In this case, that is exceeded. Given that, we don't believe that the request will adversely impact public safety or the spirit of the ordinance. Item 4, with respect to this is extraordinary circumstances. So the submittal does make reference to the size of the boat and high water levels as essentially being the needs for the variance. These are not necessarily extraordinary conditions of the property, so we may want to elaborate on that a little bit. but I do want to point out that the site does have the relatively unique condition of having 3 front yards. So it has 2 street fronts and 1 waterfront, which under the township zoning ordinance, all are considered front yards. So while this is not the only property in the township that has that condition, it is a pretty unique situation. As it relates to preservation of property rights, so in this case, the ordinance does not preclude the applicant from having a waterfront structure, simply doesn't allow them to have anything more than 12 feet into the canal. Item 6, as I mentioned on the site plan slide, we've got 45 feet to the lot line to the south and 29 feet, I believe, to the lot line to the north. That easily exceeds the minimum setback requirements under the ordinance. So given the combination of setbacks provided, as well as the navigable waterway width being exceeded in this case, we do not expect the project to result in a safety hazard. Similar to the point I just made, I'm going to get a little redundant here. Sorry for that. Bear with me. Given compliant setbacks and waterway width, also don't believe the proposal will unreasonably diminish or impair the value of surrounding properties. Item 8 is related to neighborhood character. So my comment here really is that, on their own, spring or mooring piles aren't going to affect the neighborhood character. If you look up and down the waterway, pretty much every property has some form of a waterfront structure allowed per section 17.4. What isn't clear to me is whether any of those structures go beyond the current 12-foot limitation. So what I've asked in this particular item is if the petitioner is aware of any that exceed the 12-foot limitation. I think those would be valid discussion points to bring up tonight, especially as it relates to the neighborhood character criterion. So I would look to them for some comment on that. Under supply of light and air, again, we're dealing with the waterfront structure. The project's not going to impact supply of light and air to adjacent properties. Item 10 is under orderly development, and similar to my point under number 8, again, we've got a navigable waterway that is easily met. We've got setbacks that are easily met, but I do think if there's any information regarding existing structures that are of similar size and or location, I do think that would be helpful as it relates to the standard for orderly development. Item 11 is related to vehicular circulation and traffic flow. So in this case, again, it's a waterfront structure. The structure and the variance requests are not going to impact vehicular or pedestrian traffic as outlined in the ordinance. Item 12 is nuisance impacts. We do not expect the proposal to result in the nuisance-like impacts described under that particular standard. Item 13 is impacts on adjacent properties. Again, similarly, we don't expect the project to interfere with or discourage development, use, or value of adjacent properties. And then lastly is the relationship to adjacent land. And again, sort of similar to points I've already made, the proposal is not expected to adversely impact adjacent properties in that particular manner. So, Mr. Chair, that's all I have. I know that was a lot to get through. So if the board has any questions, I would certainly be happy to take them on. If not, I would look to, if it's the chairman's desire, then I think it would be good if we could look to the applicant to try to follow up on a couple of the questions that are posed within my review letter.
Okay, Brian, thank you. Are there any questions for Brian from the board? Hearing none. Okay, so we'll go forward with the applicant, Mr. Robert Gable.
Yes.
Mr. Gable, could you come up and give us your name and address?
It's Robert Gable, address 28425 Swan Island Drive.
Okay, thank you. So now you've heard Brian's presentation and you've heard a couple of questions he had that you have to address, but you just go.
Well, I'll address them in an order that as he went down his list, because it's a very comprehensive and very well done. he hit on all the points. As far as alternates, this has been an ongoing issue. Originally, when I started keeping the boat here, if anybody's observant, there was white little bumpers with poles that were extended up that I used to adjust for the boat as downboards. But as the water rose, they become ineffective. And then I changed 2-3 years ago. I had the wood downboards put in and raised them. They're approximately 7.5 feet. And then the water rose even more. Now it crests the seawall, so the boat rub rail actually extends above those downboards. And it becomes a very safety and concern issue for my wife to try to handle the lines. I guess the first thing we'll establish is the size of the boat is 14 feet wide, and it's over 40 feet long, and it's a large yacht. It's not a small express cruiser. It has a sedan and a bridge enclosure. So it's difficult to handle in windy conditions. And with the rising of the water has caused the canal to flow faster because of the constraint of me being on top of the bridge. As Brian pointed out, I'm 45 feet from it. So we got an estimate from Chris Hurst on a cutout well, and it was going to be about $40,000 to do that. And that's extremely expensive. And it also takes a great portion of the yard up. And cutout wells are kind of like pools. If you want one, you want one. But if you don't want one, they're kind of difficult to get rid of, and you got to fill them in if somebody doesn't want it. And with the current high water conditions, I take pause at bringing water, especially across, because it would be on the northeast side of the property, because it can't go along the bridge road, another 40 or 50 feet of water closer to the house. And it would be an extremely large cut in because the boat is 14 feet. So you're talking a minimum of 17 by about 40 feet. And if the water does drop, it becomes ineffective. And now you get this big, U-shaped thing. Whereas if the water drops now and I want to get rid of the poles, they're easily removed. I think that addresses the options of it and the reasons for the poles. Poles are more or less just for safety. And my concern is obviously people turning around, having difficulty. I'm concerned. I take pause at the fact that some of the responses are they're concerned about hitting the poles. And I didn't hear anybody concerned about hitting my boat.
Okay. Do you have any other reasons that why we should favorably rule on the application, Mr. Gable?
Well, it's a safety issue.
The safety.
Yeah, it's not an aesthetic issue. It's so the boat can be moored safely along the wall, and my wife doesn't have to worry about getting pulled off on it.
Now, are you going to have a platform out into the water, out into the canal?
No, never was. The permit that I requested from the Grosse Ile Township never stated any platform or dock, just the 4 spring poles, which I'm debating on whether I'll actually put 4. I may even put 3, because I don't necessarily need, if I'm going to need the 4th one.
Okay, so you're not putting any dock or deck in so that it would further impinge upon the waterway.
No, it's going to be 16 feet on center.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Gable?
Mr. Chairman, I have a request. Brian, can you let us see everybody else so the applicant knows who he's talking to?
Brian? Hello?
Yeah, I'm asking Brian Borden to stop sharing his screen so the rest of us can see each other as well as the applicant talking to each other. Thank you. Mr. Gable, my name is Chuck Bueno. I'm a member of the board, and I have a question for you. Have you researched the cost of just using steel beams or steel poles along your seawall that would be high enough to accommodate any fluctuation in the water level? I am a boater. That's what we do where I boat. We don't put anything other than that. And when the water goes up, the poles are high enough. Have you looked into that alternative, which would not impede into the waterway at all?
It isn't about mooring the boat along the water. It's keeping the boat from pulling away. My wife does not have the physical strength to loop a pole and pull it in. And when we get a strong or even a light moderate westerly wind with the water and about 18 feet of windage, it doesn't take a whole lot to move the boat 2 or 3 feet in seconds.
But my question then is, what do the poles 16 feet into the water do? You still have to secure the boat either to the poles 16.
Well,
Hang on a second, sir.
the boat is going to go between.
Sir, can you let me finish my question? If you put the pole 16 foot into the waterway like you're asking, someone still has to secure the boat to either those poles or back to the poles that I'm asking if you looked into along your dock, correct?
Incorrect. The
Why
goal
wouldn't
is
Why wouldn't
by
the boat
putting
have
the
to be?
poles in the waterway forms a well for the boat. So once the bow and the center beam of the boat gets between the poles, it's regardless on who ties up when, because the boat can no longer move away from the dock or the seawall.
But it could move 2 feet from side to side or forward or backward depending on the current.
Well, I could move forward or backward, but it would be limited to a foot on either side of the boat at 16 feet. The boat's 14 feet wide.
So have you looked into the issue of putting poles, taller poles along the water, because your application makes great mention of the rising water levels being the safety, what's causing the safety problem?
Well, yeah. Well, the safety problem is my wife and her strength. And the more windage of the boat, the higher the boat gets, the harder it is for her to get to the poles. And if I put higher poles, then there becomes a leverage issue because they're only bolted down at the seawall.
That's your choice. That's the way you choose to put the boards in. You can make a steel plate as we do here, and certainly as they do all around. So you have more than one place to bolt that board to. We all of us that have boats have to address the high water from time to time. This is one of those times. It can be accomplished.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Gable?
Yes, Jim, when I was there looking down the canal, I saw no spring poles in that canal that resembled what they want to put up there. So I'm not sure, you know, the other boaters seem to live without them.
Yeah, now that was a question that Brian had, John.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't address that. There's a boathouse on the other side of Swan Island that's 16 feet into the water, Mr. Bennings. There's 2 other boathouses on the east and west side that extend into the canal. One is 14 feet, 6 inches, and the other one is 15 feet. They're covered boathouses.
Different situation, you know.
And then, of course, there's the end house that has a hoist that's over 18 feet into the canal.
So you're saying that there is a precedent?
Yeah, there's 5 boathouses on my canal alone.
Well, those are grandfathered in, right? They're not new boat wells.
Well,
I have the boat next door and I'm having no problem with the high water or docking.
Hold on, can you,
Identify yourself.
you got to identify,
Not the Bono, next door neighbor north of Mr. Gable.
come to the, can you identify yourself and your address,
Yep.
please?
I'm next door and those other boat wells are
Your
grandfathered.
name and your address.
Who's speaking?
John DeBono, 28395 Swan Island Drive, right next door to Mr. Gable, north side.
Okay,
I have a 34-foot sea right. I have no problem docking. I adjust my lines to my poles when the water's high. Those other boat wells Mr. Gable's referring to are grandfathered and they've been there forever. This is a new dwelling that's being proposed that is not needed, in my opinion.
So when you say they're not needed, you're saying that that the applicant can actually operate and without the need for a change to the ordinance.
That's correct. I dock my 34-foot sea ray. I adjust the lines if the water goes up or down. I just keep an eye on it, and we're all boaters. It is what it is.
Mhm.
I would like to address, my name is Kathy Gable, and I would like to address, I'm at 28425 Swan. Okay, Mr. DeBono has a totally different type of boat than we do. He has a 34-foot Sea Ray cruiser. We have a bridge boat that stands quite high, and it's not the same comparison when trying to dock that type of boat versus a cruiser. With water levels and the weight of the boat and pulling in to dock. And as my husband stated, in reference to that, I need to have an additional resource for me to be able to pull the line in, whether it be on the seawall side or on the port side. And once that line is tied, then my husband would be able to come down and help with the rest of the lines. But at least that way, it is in a specific well format that would enable us to dock it safely and without me having issues possibly falling or not being able to reach. We do have another hoist that is down at the end of the canal that is 16 foot out, and there are two there. So they don't have the poles, but they do have a hoist. So not talking about the covered boat wells, but a specific hoist. And then on the other side of our bridge in that canal, there are numerous hoists that stick out into the canal.
My name is Robin Benson. I'm at 28252 Barbara Lane. I'm across the canal. I was going, as I was reading this from the township, I was going by a letter that I received from December 19th, 2019 from the Department of Army Corps of Engineers that you wanted a 40-foot dock, and it was going to be 30 feet from the north side of the property line, 25 feet from the south side of the property line, and you were going to have a 4-foot wide dock on top of that. Is this not true at all anymore? Is this out the window?
That is correct. That was initial application that and it was done by Chris Hurst, and we went a different route and we're going with the poles. So the information that you're utilizing is no longer valid.
Okay, one other question. How far from the bridge is going to be your piling or your boat? Do you have that information?
45 feet.
45 feet, okay. Because I took some measurements, and underneath the Swan Island Bridge is 58 feet. And as far as if you have 58 feet and you go out, we'll say 16 feet is 58 minus 16. You cut that down to 40 feet as far as navigable waterway, as far as there's only 40 feet now left under the bridge for a boat or a fisherman to get through. And my question is the safetiness as far as anglers and duck hunters go out in the dark and they're not looking for a structure in the middle of the canal, and that would be a safety issue. Boats have lights, but they're not spotlights. So that was my main concern also, is that a structure sticking out there, because there's only 58 feet underneath the dock, and if you're going out 16 plus feet, that narrows it right down for all the other boaters going under the dock.
Okay, Ms. Robin Benson, do you have any other issues that you want to address?
Yes, I did.
Yes?
Yes, I did. On Sunday, we brought our friends' boats over, and I put milk jugs in the water coming out 17 feet, And then we had a boat tied in front of my home. And then we had a gentleman turn his boat in the area where it would be in front of my home. And all the milk jugs basically didn't make it. They have cut down on the turning radius as far as the in front of the bridge and in front of my home. They've cut down on the turning radius. Is the proposed pylons or dock, I'm not sure which it is now, is that going to still start 30 feet from the lot line, the north lot line?
Yes,
Go ahead.
Yes, there's,
30 feet.
Okay,
Canal
30
is-
feet from the lot line and sticking out into the water would prevent those people from turning a radius. As you saw on Sunday, we brought 2 boats over and it hindered their turning radius. And I'm going to speak with John right here because he was one of the gentlemen that had the problem turning the boat around.
It's going to create an issue for sure, as far as turning for sports fishermen or anybody that comes down here on a pontoon to make that turn.
Okay. You're saying that you used going into the canal, you said 18 or 19 feet. What did you use?
Well,
Rob?
I was still going by way of what the Army Corps of Engineers said. They said he was going into the canal 17 feet. And then if you put a 4-foot dock on top of that, that's going into the canal 19 feet. But apparently that is, I did not know this was null and void. But still, it's still underneath the dock is still 58 feet. And even if he goes under the canal 16 feet, that only leaves 40 feet underneath the bridge to navigate other boats and other sports utility vehicles.
But as far as your question, yeah, as far as your question about the radius, the turning radius, if they stuck to their 16-foot extension into the canal, then that would help the matter, right?
That would, not according to what we saw on Sunday, that still took out the buoys. And that is also if Mr. Gable does not park his 14-foot Boston Whaler on the outside of these pylons also. If he does that, then we have another issue with taking up more space of people coming down the canal.
Kathy Gable, we have no intention of parking our Boston Whaler on the other side of the poles. It will be parked in front of our boat along our seawall. As far as in response to your comment about you did 17 feet, according to what I read in the letter you posted, you did 19 feet, which was 2.5 feet more than what we plan to extend into the canal. So there should be more than adequate enough space for someone to be able to back out of a well on your side without hitting our poles or our boat.
Okay, you have a 40-foot boat and you're backing it out into this current. I would hate to see something built in this canal and then to find out that it wasn't, the structure's already there, then to find out it couldn't be used because of the current and the size of your boat. You have an awfully large boat, and once that current catches your nose or the tail end of your boat, it's going to go into anything that's there, whether it be the boat at the end of my deck or the dock or the bridge or something else. But that current, as you said, Mr. Gable, as far as the wind and the current, it's tough to handle. And so backing out, it's tough to handle. Pulling in or pulling out, it's tough to handle with that current. You stated that yourself. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Benson?
Mr. Gable, I appreciate for referencing the current and everything. That's the point. I have a hard time keeping the boat against the seawall. That's the reason for the poles.
So your Boston Whaler is going to be parked by the seawall.
Correct. It's going to be either in the front, like I did the last 4 years when the boat was there.
Yeah. So that in your opinion, that shouldn't be an issue.
No.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Do we have any other questions from the board for Mr. Gable?
Yes. Could the parties involved within 500 feet get a new proposal? We just had the pilings, and I'm going by something from.
Go ahead.
I'm going by the Department of Engineers, what they said, and now that things have changed, they might have 4 pilings or just 3 pilings it has changed as far as how far from the bridge and all that information is changed and it's not on the the Grosville paperwork that we received.
See, the question we have is we got to go by what was submitted to the Grosville board, to the Grosville Township. So that's what we're ruling on.
But we didn't see that.
You didn't see the petition?
We didn't see any dimensions. See, from the Army Corps of Engineers, they gave us dimensions. The township, they didn't give us dimensions, because I'll go out there and measure. As far as, I'm still concerned about the safety issue under the bridge when this is in the middle of the canal.
Okay. Okay. I got another question. Do we have any other questions for Mr. Gable from the board?
It's too bright right now.
Do we have any other, are there any other people that have a question that wants to address the issue at hand? Is there, I don't think there's anybody on the Zoom meeting.
Yes, I am. My name is Angel Pluskas, and I live at 28476 Barbara Lane.
Okay.
My concern is, one, the diagrams given don't actually reflect his yard. The photo that was used in the beginning of the slideshow does not reflect that his seawall now comes out another 2 feet after he had it put in. It is extended into the original waterway. Secondly, I'm out there almost every night fishing. We've got kids coming through in kayaks in the evening. How are they supposed to see this structure? Is this structure going to be reflective? How do we keep the kids that go up and down this canal safe?
I can address that.
Okay, Mr. Gable, you want to address that?
Let's first address the big question. The canal was surveyed and provided Brian the survey plot. The canal is 88 feet wide, and that was just done on Brian's August the 6th. So it's 88 feet wide. That's from seawall to seawall.
Mr. Gable, this is Robin again, from your seawall to my seawall.
Yeah, it's 88 feet. It was shot. Brian he's got the plot. I provided him a copy when I applied for the permit.
Oh, if we could be supplied with that too, that would be great.
Township has that information. The letter that went out said if you had any additional questions that you could contact them. Also, when you were out measuring on Sunday, my wife went out and asked you if you had any questions or concerns, and you said no, that you had all the information.
No, your wife asked me if I needed any help. And I said, no, thanks. And she said, the township has all this. And I said, I'd like to see the visual. It's okay. It doesn't matter. Let's get on with it.
Thank you. Let's stop.
Can I just address the issue about the poles? The poles are going to be capped. They'll be white. They'll show up at night. Most likely, we are going to put lights on top of the poles.
So that would address
So they're not going to be an obstruction, and the canal will be more than wide enough.
So getting the lights on the pole would help the safety issue, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Jim, can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a neighbor within 500 feet. I'd like to say something. My name is Matt Markley. I'm at 28240 Barber Lane. I'm directly across and offset one home. I have a really hard time understanding how we get to this point without really understanding what the proposal is. I mean, it's the common theme I'm hearing here is we don't really know what Mr. Gable's trying to do. This is the first time the documentation that I got showed that there was going to be 4 pilings. I heard that there was going to be a dock on the other side of it. You know, now it sounds as if there's a lot of new information and things that the folks on the line are unaware of. So I don't know how we get to the point to where we're passing judgment on this without really understanding what is even being done.
So what is your name again?
Matt Markley.
Matt Markley. Okay, Matt, so your question is that you don't have enough sufficient information to make a judgment on what's going on.
Well, yeah, the documentation that came to us didn't reflect any of the information. There was no site plan that we just saw. There's you look across the canal and it appears like if they're putting things there for whatever reason, that there's not going to be much room for people to get through, because there's a bridge right there. People come and go. They come right out of the bridge. Could they run into it? Now we're talking about there being poles and lights on the poles and things that, safety concerns with Mr. Gable's wife. There's just no communication other than just now when we see a site proposal and can actually hear what's going on.
Okay, so for your purposes, you right now, you are not in favor of the proposal.
I don't understand the proposal. I haven't seen it other than one slide that was just presented. This is new. This is brand new information to me, and I think it's brand new information to the others. We're going off a Army Corps of Engineering drawing, I believe, where there was going to be a dock or something.
The Army Corps of Engineering was not up to date.
Yeah.
So that wasn't up to date. So what we're going with is what the townships they've provided the board information. They gave us a site plan, and they gave us information based on the 4 poles. So we got what you got, evidently.
No, we didn't. That's my point. We didn't get that. Robin's saying she didn't get that, and I don't know how you pass judgment on something like this without understanding what they're intending to do.
Hey, Brian or Lori, somebody, do we know what was sent to the neighbors?
Well, part of this, I tried to do the background so everybody understood. There's 2 separate procedures at play here. So there's notification for the Zoning Board of Appeals request, which I think is very clear what's before you. There was a notification procedure earlier this summer that was related to the waterfront request. And going back even farther, like late or into the winter, I believe Army Corps and the state do their own notification process as well. So there's 3 or 4 notification procedures here that are, I think, causing some of the confusion. So what is before the board is what was submitted in the ZBA packet. That is 4 mooring piles, 16 foot on center into the canal. It's about a 4 to 4.5 foot variance requested from what the ordinance allows. That's what's before the board.
I don't have any problem with that.
That isn't the question.
My question is, what was sent to the neighbors? Was this drawing?
Meeting? No, drawings are not submitted as part of the notification process. Now, I don't do those. We can ask Lori, but the notification has to include the information pertinent to the request, which is what the variance request is related to, and when, how, where the public hearing will be, as well as the availability to acquire additional information from those residents who are notified.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, that makes more sense.
Thank you.
Brian,
Brian?
Jim, can you hear me?
Hello, Brian?
Yes.
Hey, Brian, I'm a little confused along with the neighbors here, because it was originally submitted as they were challenging the ordinance. And I guess it was rewritten to now say that there was something unusual about their property. Not the ordinance is okay, but there's something unusual about their property that would warrant this. And I still haven't heard anything about their property that would, warrant this, and us giving them permission to do this and not everybody else. I don't know what the property reason is, if that's what they changed it to.
Well, so part of it is, it's noted in my letter, it was essentially just an error on the application form. That's been corrected. So pay no attention to that. You have your ZBA application form has 2 options. You're either appealing a decision or you're seeking a dimensional variance. The petitioner, probably in haste of getting the submittal together, they just checked the wrong box. That's all that was. The township has received a corrected application form that will go in the permanent file. That's been addressed.
Okay. So,
As it relates to the practical difficulty and unique circumstances of the property, that's what we're here to decide tonight.
yeah, yeah.
That's what
I'm bringing
you
up.
all have to decide based on section 23.5 of the zoning.
Yeah, that's what I'm bringing up. I haven't heard anything that relates to any thing about their property that requires us to give them consideration for this, other than, you know, everyone else. Their property is as normal as it seems to me, normal as everybody else's. Okay, I understand.
Okay, so do we have any other comments from the board?
Jim, can you hear me?
Yes,
This is John Swikert. Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, I want to go back to the first part of this discussion. I'm not a boater, but what I understand, you know, there is a way to install something, a piece vertical steel adjacent to the seawall to moor to. But I'm hearing that it's difficult to navigate a boat up against that in order to connect to the boat. Now, I don't understand then how adding more pilings on the opposite side improves that situation. It's still the same current, it's still the same wind, you're bringing the boat in.
No,
I don't understand. Explain this to me, please. I'm confused.
because with the pilings there, the boat can only go so far and then it hits the pilings. If
Well,
the pilings aren't there, it can go all the way across the canal if there's a strong westerly wind and he loses control, which he's alleging he may do.
So are you saying you put pads or something there to when it hits the poles? I mean, that's damage, isn't it?
That's up to him. It's his boat.
I don't understand how this. Okay. All right. So at most it moves then 4 feet, which is the difference between the 12-foot width and the 16-foot distance between the shore and the pilings. Is that correct?
No,
It's not correct. Okay.
his boat's 14 foot wide.
Okay, so it's 1 foot clearance. So he's bringing that boat in with 1 foot clearance on either side. So that means that if right now, if you're 2 feet away from the shore, you can tie to it. But if okay.
So John, do you have, are you satisfied with the answer? John?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to understand how this really
Yeah,
improves.
I can understand, you know, the navigating that, the 14-foot boat in between the pilot, between the post and the steel duct side. That's what you're asking.
Can this boat, if this boat pulls straight in, does it go out and when you want to go out, does it go out and turn around in the canal and go back out, or does it back all the way to the river?
I'll answer that. I back it up and turn it around and send it out because the canal is more than wide enough for a 40-foot boat to turn completely around. It's 88 feet. The poles are going to pin the boat against the seawall so that I can come down from the bridge and help my wife secure it.
Okay.
How does this information relate to the fact that we just heard one of the neighbors say they tried to turn a boat in the canal and had difficulties? And apparently a smaller boat. I don't understand.
Well, sir, that would be a question I would have since my boat's been there. The boat will be there. The boat, as we pointed out, is 14 feet wide, does extend into the canal approximately 15 feet, maybe a little more, because it's not tight up against the poles. There's fenders between the poles and the boat. So that's a good question. How do they turn around without hitting my boat? If they're concerned about hitting the pilings, they're going to be 6 inches and basically, 12 inches away from the boat. I would have concerns about my boat and my safety of the boat now.
Okay, what you're saying, all right, taking this further, what you're telling me is when the boat is parked there right now, it sticks out about over 14 feet into the water, 15 feet. What you're adding with these posts is another 1.5 feet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So all of this over 1.5 feet, basically.
That's correct.
This is Robin Benson. I live across the canal. But these will be permanent structures in the canal. How long will this be? You're going to have, you said you're going to have three pilings or 4 pilings. What's the distance between the first piling and the last piling?
They're 10 foot on center.
So 30 feet. And there's no dock or hoist, correct?
No dock, no hoist.
So, all right, so there, that's, all right.
So
Okay,
all you got is the post.
Okay, so all we've got is the post. Once again, you have a 40-foot boat and you have a 30 feet between the posts, from the first post to the last post, and you're going to back it out in the canal. Okay, with this current, like I said, the current and the wind, it isn't going to be there because he's sticking out in the canal already. As far as you've taken the canal, which is supposedly 88 feet, less 16 down to 72 feet. And so now you're backing a boat out. And like you said, if I have a boat at the end of my deck, like you said, there goes some more space. You know, I would be restricted from what size boat I or a future resident here could put in the water, because pulling out a 40-foot boat with this canal, backing it out and turning it with the wind and this current is a tough one. That's what they tried to prove on Sunday, as far as with this current, and there was no wind, it's very, very difficult to do. So someone's going to lose. Someone's boat's going to lose. And like I said before, it would be a shame to have something put in the water, have a permanent structure built in the water, only to find out it's not possible to use because of the current and the wind.
This is Angel Palaskis. I had taken a video of my boat parked at Robin's house. I was not able to mail it in because it was such a large video. In that video, it shows the other neighbor's boat. I'm not going to say colliding. It ran into my boat. We had to hurry up and throw bumpers out because with that current, he couldn't do it. Also, when he backed out to go back, he got caught in the current. So I don't understand how he is going to maneuver a 40-foot boat. If perhaps he could mark the canal where these pilings are going to be and show us how he's going to safely navigate this and not impede anybody else's ability to park a boat there, I would be in favor with that.
This is Robert again. The boat has been there for 4 years. I know how hard it is to navigate the canal. I back it up and turn it around all the time. Okay? The problem is with the current, and currently my wife is not strong enough to loop the down board or any other board to keep the boat pinned against the seawall before the current pushes it away. I cannot get down fast enough. The idea of the poles is so the boat ping pongs between the pole and the seawall, and I don't have to worry about her falling off.
So that's the issue, Mr. Gable, that it's the safety of your wife?
Correct. And the safety and protection of my boat, because it sits above the seawall on numerous occasions because it's a big boat, as everybody keeps pointing out. And it's been there for 4 years, and I've attempted several different alternate methods to do it. And the best one I came up with right now is to keep the boat pinned against the seawall and to prevent my wife from getting thrown or pulled off the boat because, you know, the current, as 3 people have stated, you know, they had to run out and put fenders on their smaller boat because of the current, doesn't pull her off with the line before I can get down and help. You know, when I put the boat between the seawall and the poles, I know it's a difficult concept without seeing it, but it's...
Mr. Gable, I got a question. You know, you've got the seawall, and we've had the water. Now, has the water ever risen over the seawall?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what happens is when that happens, even if you had the poles 16 foot out, that boat could move towards your house.
No, because the
No.
downboards catch the hull.
Okay.
That's the idea of the outboard poles, is to pull the boat
So you
away
just
from
have
the
the
seawall.
outboard poles.
You got inboard poles and you got outboard poles. The outboard poles is like a slip at a marina. So once I pull between the poles, the boat is pinned between the poles and the seawall.
So you don't have to worry about the rising water.
No, the rising water is irrelevant. It's the fact that the water is risen, which has caused the current to increase, which makes it even more difficult to pull the boat in because it has more windage now. It's not sitting 4 feet below the seawall like in 2014 when I first started bringing the boat here.
Mr. Gable, is there a reason you don't allow your wife to drive the boat in, and because you're significantly stronger, you handle the ropes?
She doesn't have the ability to dock the boat. She pilots the boat on open water, but she doesn't have the ability to dock the boat.
Okay, this is Robin Benz again. Mr. Gable, you said you have 4 pilings, so that's going to be 10 feet between each one. That's 30 feet. You have a 40-foot long boat, so you're going to have to back out at least 30 feet before you're going to be able to turn the back end of your boat out, and you're going to have to turn your boat out 30 feet before you're going to be able to turn. And so did you say the first piling is going to start 30 feet from the lot line to the north?
That's correct. It's going to be
Okay.
a minimum of 30 feet from the lot line. And
Okay, so
I
you-
might even pull it up another 4 or 5 feet. But
So
I'm not
if-
concerned. A boat isn't a box. It's a triangle. And as the back end comes out, the front end gets smaller, so it's easy to swing.
Okay,
out.
you
It's not a
have,
problem. I swing
you
it
have-
towards Mr. I'm not sure, Matt's house. I back the boat up to his house. And then
okay,
I pivot it and pull out the canal and drive it out.
okay. So if you're 30 feet from the lot line, you've got to get at least 30 feet of the tail end of your boat out into the water before you can start to turn. And that 30 feet, you're going to the lot line of Mr. DeBono. So he cannot park his boat right at the lot line, because as soon as you get that
Technically,
30,
Miss
as
Robin,
soon as you get the
it's
30
36 feet. That's why there's a 6-foot seat back.
as soon as you get your 30 feet of the tail end of the boat out, you start to turn, that current is going to catch that tail end of the boat and swing you around. And like you said, you're going to hit, well, hopefully there's nothing there for you to hit. But what you keep talking about the current, and now I'm speaking of the current and the pilings, that you've got to get 30 feet of that boat out into the current before you're able to swing the nose around and go upstream.
No, only need to get half the boat out, 18 feet. And there's a 6-foot setback, so it's actually 36 feet.
Okay, your boat is 14 feet wide, and you said pilings are going to be 16 feet from the seawall. Correct?
Right?
Okay, so it's going to be, I'm still saying it's going to be about 30 feet before you can start to turn, get the tail end of that boat
Absolutely,
out into the
that's
current.
not correct, because when I back it up, you know, Amy and Paul, they used to have a jet ski lift that actually was on my property that extended 8 feet out into the canal, and I backed it up just fine.
Mr. Gable, I
I
have a
have
question.
no problem handling my boat.
Mr. Gable, I have a question for you along the lines from Miss Benson. I want you to assume we grant your request and we grant everybody in that canal the same request with poles 16 feet out from their lot lines into their side of the canals, both sides. Would you be able to turn your 40-foot boat around if that were the scenario, or would you have to back all the way out?
Absolutely, would be able to spin it around without a problem. The canal is 88 feet, center line to center line, 16-foot poles, leave 28 feet, which is 56 feet.
If there, this is Robin again, if there's no boat parked at the end of my deck, and also the, you said the boat's been parked there for years. Well, the boat's been parked there for years, and you can turn it around because the poles weren't there. Now you're restricted as how you have to turn the tail end of the boat out into the water and before the current catches it.
I really appreciate your concern about how I'm going to maneuver my boat, but if the poles become a problem for me, then I'll have to remove them.
Can we get that in writing?
Well, if it's a problem for me, I don't think you're going to need it in writing.
And it seems like if you, the safety of your wife, it seems like as far as for the safety of both of you, a boat well would just be right up your alley as far as to pull it in and be both of you safe. This boat well is very safe. I have one.
Yeah, but you know, I think that's rude to park a 40-foot boat along a neighbor's property line and they get to look at 18 feet of fiberglass.
So what am I going to look at?
Besides the fact that it's extremely expensive, and once it's done, it can't be removed. And if the water does go down, most likely I'll probably pull the poles because I'm not really happy to have the poles out there either. But it's my last alternative over the last 5 years of the continuing water rise.
Could we get something from the township stating that these poles actually can be removed if necessary, if things don't work out?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, Ms. Benson,
yes.
I think, you know, when we make a motion, we can include that in the motion if the board agrees with that. We can do that.
This is Angel Pulaskis again. I have another question. With the way that Michigan is and the way that storms come in, if he is navigating his boat down the canal, it is extremely windy and he misses these poles that he has in, his front end hits it and his back end swings around and damages the bridge. Is it the taxpayers who have to repair the bridge?
That's a county decision.
Yeah.
Hi, can I add something, please? I'm neighbor, Mr. Gables. My wife, when we come in the dock, granted my boat's 34 feet, it's not 60. I have lines tied to the poles on the dock. What she does, she hooks the line onto the cleat. That secures the boat. So the boat's not gonna go away. All she has to do is secure the boat on the cleat and the boat's not going to pull away from the dock. And then she can go back to the next one and do it.
That would be a really good idea.
Mm-hmm. That's the most simple solution and it's not going to pull anybody in. All you have to do is take the loop end of the line and throw it on a cleat. Bam, you're hooked.
Okay. Do you have any other questions? Does the board have any questions? Do we have any more public comments from anybody? I think we probably heard everybody that wanted to make a comment. Does the board have any other questions?
Jim, this is John Swikert. I have one more question for Brian Borden.
Okay.
Brian, you know, these two permits that were given by the state, I presume that when they did their evaluation, they looked at navigation safety. You know, we heard earlier about people coming under the bridge and hitting the poles and that sort of thing. Would that have been a factor that they would have considered, or do you know that?
I do not know that. I can't speak with 100% accuracy as to what Army Corps and/or Eagle look at in their reviews and approvals.
Okay, thank you.
John, have you been out there? Did you see the distance between the water and the bottom of the bridge?
Yes, I took a picture of it.
It's like 2 feet, maybe.
No, it's a little more than that. I would say it's 3.5, something like that. But again, you know, where is it going to be? You know, 3 years from now?
We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. So no,
I guess the thing I'm struggling with there, I'm hearing that there are alternatives to these poles, you know, that don't require us to grant a variance. By the same token, you know, I'm hearing that in effect, when that boat is parked there, we're talking about a foot and a half difference basically in navigation on that canal, which to me is basically irrelevant. A foot and a half in an 80-foot canal is nothing. So I don't know what I'm missing here on this.
Okay, this is Robin again. Can you help me out with the foot and a half?
Can I hear the applicant please speak to what the neighbor just said about the cleats and the pole and that sort of thing, and this vertical piece of steel that the board member actually talked about earlier in this meeting? Why isn't that viable? Again, I pardon my ignorance, but I'm not a boater. So help me out here, please.
It's a big boat. Mr. DeBono's boat is only 12 foot wide and sits about 5 feet out of the water. My boat is 14 feet wide and sits 18 feet out of the water and weighs about 3 times as much as his does.
And that's irrelevant.
All you have to do is throw the line on the cleat with the loop side. It'll hold it.
Folks, I think we're having a difference of boating capability here that has nothing to do with the variance being sought by the applicant. And we could be here till 2 in the morning arguing that my ability to operate my boat is better than the applicant's. That I don't think is the issue. The issue is do we grant the variance for the 4 poles, 2 or 2.5 feet approximately in excess of what the ordinance allows? Am I correct, Mr. Borden?
Yes, you're correct, Chuck.
It's more in the line of 4.5 feet, just to get an accurate number, but yes.
My apology on the other thing. That is what's in front of us today, not to debate how everyone else can navigate a boat or navigate this canal. And I understand the neighbors' concerns because everybody is different. But again, even with those poles 10 feet apart, somebody can still hit Mr. Gable's boat. So I don't think it's going to be that's going to be a absolute stopping anybody, because people hit boats with less than 10 feet between poles. I don't think that's the issue of navigation. I think the issue is just whether the variance should be granted. That's what's in front of us today.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And my question is one of precedence. If we agree to this, what stops other people from going 16 and a half foot into the canal? I mean, that's a question.
Well, Mr. Chair, as we've talked before, I mean, the board, an action by the board that is made based on review standards, if you believe there is evidence of a practical difficulty, you're not setting precedent. But you have to make a clear finding based on the review criteria. So focus on the review criteria. If you believe they're met, then you can take favorable action based on that. If you do not believe they are met, then you can take unfavorable action, if you will, to keep the same line of thinking. That's where the focus needs to be. So somebody else would have the ability, anybody can apply for this variance. Anyone on the waterway can apply for a variance to encroach more than 12 feet into the canal. The question is whether each of those individual requests, sorry, I got a little echo, if each of those individual requests meets the test for practical difficulty along with the host of other criteria based on 23.5B. So hopefully that makes sense, but precedent setting you shouldn't be worried about that. You should be focused on the review criteria and whether or not they're met.
Well, you're saying that if the next person comes with the same problems that, and they cite this case here, that doesn't make any difference.
Right.
Well,
That's
again,
correct,
each case is going to be evaluated on its own merits based on the 14 standards in your ordinance. Okay. Now, if somebody else comes in with the same request and they meet all 14 standards, then you should grant it. If they do not, then you should not. But you don't have to grant a variance because we've granted the same variance before. It'll be evaluated on its own merits based on the review standards.
Okay.
So Jim, the facts and circumstances of each case adds to that, and how these the review is done. So they'd have to have the same set of circumstances to fit into that. And as Brian said, I don't think we have to worry about that.
Yeah, okay. Then the question really comes to a safety issue. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, that's some of the person's or the neighbor's issues, Chairman. It's not, Brian didn't think there would be in his report, but the neighbors brought up that there are. That's their concerns as well.
Right. So we do have some opposition from the neighbors saying that the posts present a problem for them. That's what we've got.
Correct.
So, okay.
That was me, Robin Benson. I measured underneath the bridge, and the waterway is only 58 feet. So if you take something out 16 feet, then what would have you done as far as what you've reduced it to?
What?
But no, because you got to remember that the 16 feet
No.
for those poles are back 45, at least 45 feet from the bridge. Is that correct, Mr. Gable?
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah, so that's 45 feet back. So it's not going to be right on the bridge. So they're going to be able to go around that and have their 58 feet.
Okay. I think we've worked this enough that we can maybe have the board considering coming to a resolution to this. Considering what we've heard, is there somebody that wants to make a motion on this appeal?
I move that we reject appeal number 20-004 based on the circumstances, 14 of which we are supposed to consider under section 23.5B, namely the extraordinary circumstances here aren't anything that prevents you from using your property, Mr. Gable. Unfortunately, the extraordinary circumstances here are the size of your boat and your now current problem docking the boat. I don't see that as a extraordinary circumstance that prevents you from using the land, nor do I see under section 1 that it's a practical difficulty that prevents you from using your property as indicated.
I support that completely and agree with everything you've just said.
Okay, we've got a support. Now, can we have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion carries. The appeal has been denied. Thank you all for this good debate. The next issue that we have on is the comments. Do we have any comments and miscellaneous that we want to address? From the board, anything? Lori? Is Lori there?
Yep, I'm here.
I just wondered if we have another appeal?
No, not next month. Nothing on there.
Oh, good. I don't have to figure out how to get on again. Oh, good.
Oh,
Can we, hey, Jim,
Yeah,
both Jims, can we appeal to the powers that be so we can use the room again?
Yes. Yes.
Gary, I started conversation today with Brian Friel, looking at different ways so that we could get back into the room instead of doing these Zoom meetings. Because
Amen.
I have more of them than you guys do. I hate them. So we're looking at some different angles of trying to work it so we can get back in the boardroom.
Yeah, but Jim, you're in charge of getting these meetings canceled or not having any meetings.
I know, and I'll keep that at the forefront, John, for you.
Jim, I have a question, and for the board, a comment. Does your potential win of the election in November create an open seat on the Board of Zoning Appeals, since you would then be the township supervisor?
It does, and one of the first things that the new board will have to do is appoint liaisons to each of the commissions and the board. So that's up. It'll all be up for discussion. Chances are better than that I will be leaving you. But I'll try. I'll try and give you somebody good.
Oh, no.
Lori, do we have any applicants, or is there a process that we?
It'd be
board.
the board liaison will appoint.
Trustee.
Okay.
Will appoint a trustee or an officer to the.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, just wanted to make sure how we're handling it.
Yeah.
Jim Budney?
Yes.
Yeah, so congratulations. I want to do that.
Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. And if I don't get to sit with you, you guys again, Lori doesn't come up with anything.
I'll find something.
It really has been a pleasure working with all of you, and I won't be that far away.
Well, Jim, I'm drafting that ordinance proposal to allow the township supervisor to sit on any board he so chooses, okay?
Thank you.
So you're gonna choose to maybe not do anything, right? 'Cause you're
Well,
gonna-
I will have the DDA, I am the liaison, I would be the liaison for that night. I have to look at how much time I'm gonna have to do these, so,
Hey, Jim,
yes.
there is precedent for former board members or commissioners to sit in on meetings, as was done at the DPS commission when someone was elected to office.
Yes. Yes.
Should these discussions be not public comment and or miscellaneous items?
Okay, I think,
Probably.
can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
All right.
Thanks, guys.